At exactly 6:43 in the morning, a Pennsylvania State Police radio picked up a strange transmission. It was from a school bus. But this wasn't just any bus. This was School Bus 57, a vehicle that had vanished without a trace over 20 years ago. And the voice on the other end wasn't asking for help. It was calm, almost casual, and it said, "We're still on the road, and the children haven't aged." This isn't a ghost story. This is the unsolved mystery of School Bus 57, a case that law enforcement quietly closed but never truly explained. October 12, 1998, started like any other fall morning in rural Pennsylvania. A thick fog rested low between the tall pine trees. The air was cold, quiet, and completely ordinary. At 6:15 a.m., School Bus 57 pulled out of the small town of Blackwood Creek, carrying its usual load of 22 children, ranging from 7 to 14 years old. The driver, Thomas Halley, was a 52-year-old veteran with a perfect driving record. He had driven this exact route for nearly 15 years. The path he took was an old, narrow forest road that locals called Pine Ridge Road. It was a shortcut, cutting straight through the woods and saving nearly 20 minutes off the trip. At 6:32 a.m., the bus made its final scheduled stop. 8 minutes later, at 6:40 a.m., Thomas radioed into dispatch with a routine check-in. Bus 57 entering Pine Ridge. Visibility's low, but manageable. That was the last normal communication anyone ever received from that bus. When Bus 57 didn't show up at Blackwood Middle School by 7:10 a.m., the administration just assumed there was a delay. Fog could do that. But by 7:30 a.m., anxious parents started calling the school. By 8 a.m., the police were officially notified. Patrol units were immediately sent down Pine Ridge Road. But halfway through the dense forest, they realized something was deeply wrong. The road was completely empty. There were no skid marks on the asphalt, no broken branches along the shoulder, no signs of any kind of accident. It was as if a 40-foot yellow school bus had simply vanished into thin air. Search teams quickly expanded the radius. K-29 units were brought in, but the dogs lost the scent almost immediately. Helicopters scanned the dense canopy from above, but found nothing. They even checked nearby rivers, just in case. By nightfall, the reality of the situation began to sink in. 22 children, their driver, and a massive school bus had completely disappeared. 3 long days later, a hunter made a call that sent a jolt through the entire investigation. He claimed he'd found the bus, and School Bus 57 was discovered 11 miles away from its route, deep in the forest, parked neatly between 2 massive oak trees. The engine was cold. The doors were shut. The keys were still sitting in the ignition. Inside, everything looked normal. Lunchboxes were tucked under the seats. Backpacks were hanging from their hooks. On a clipboard, a math worksheet was dated October 20. Not a single one. The driver's seat was empty. The radio was turned off. It looked like everyone on board had simply stood up and walked away into the woods. As forensic teams processed the scene, they discovered a series of unexplainable details. The bus had no mud on its tires, even though it was found deep in soft forest soil. The fuel tank was nearly full, despite the fact that the route it had taken should have used up a significant amount of gas. And the strangest detail of all, the clock on the bus's dashboard was frozen. It was stuck at 6:43 a.m., exactly 3 minutes after the driver's last radio transmission. Police searched the surrounding area for weeks. They found no footprints, no pieces of clothing, no remains, nothing. The case went national. News vans descended on the small town. The faces of the missing children were everywhere. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, hope slowly began to fade, replaced by a deep, unresolved grief. By 2001, the case was officially labeled missing, presumed deceased. But no bodies were ever found. The mystery was sealed. Fast forward nearly 20 years to October 2018. State Trooper Daniel Cross was working the early morning shift, monitoring the radio channels. At exactly 6:43 a.m., his radio crackled to life. At first, it just sounded like static. But then, a voice came through, clear as day. "Dispatch, this is Bus 57. We're running late." Daniel froze. Bus 57 was not an active unit. That call sign hadn't existed for 2 decades. The voice on the radio continued, sounding confused. The road won't end. The trees, they keep repeating. Dispatch worked frantically and confirmed the signal source. It was coming from Pine Ridge Road, the same forest as summertime. Officers rushed to the location, their hearts pounding, and there it was. School bus 57, parked on the side of the road as if it had never left. The yellow paint was faded, but the bus itself was intact. There was no rust, no decay. It was almost untouched by time. As police cautiously approached and opened the doors, what they saw inside changed everything. The children were there. All of them, sitting quietly in their seats. Alive. They were still wearing their 1998-style clothing. Their backpacks were the same. And their faces hadn't aged a single day. When the officers asked them what year it was, they all gave the same bewildered answer. "It's Monday. We're late for school." They tried to explain what happened. They said the forest never ended. The road just kept looping back on itself. Sometimes it was night, and sometimes it was morning. But the clock on the dashboard always said 6:43 a.m. They told the officers they never felt hungry, never felt tired. For them, time had simply stopped. But one person was still missing. The driver, Thomas Harley, was not in his seat, but his voice was on the radio. When investigators later played the original transmission from 1998 and the new one from 2018 side by side, they made a chilling discovery. They were identical. The summit on the same words, the same slight pauses between phrases. It was as if the message hadn't just been repeated, but replayed across time itself. As authorities began preparing to evacuate the children from the bus, the radio switched on one last time. This time, the voice was different. It was older, weaker, and filled with a sense of dread. "You shouldn't have come." Before anyone could react, the bus doors slammed shut on their own. The engine roared to life. The officers standing outside watched in disbelief as the trees lining the road seemed to stretch and bend inward, creating a tunnel of darkness around the bus. The vehicle began to roll slowly forward into the unnatural shadows. And then, it vanished. Right in front of them, there was no explosion, no sound, not even a puff of smoke. It was just gone. The children were never seen again. No official reports mention their brief, impossible return. The 2018 incident was immediately classified, buried under layers of secrecy. Trooper Daniel Crost resigned from the force 6 months later. Before I left, he wrote a single, cryptic sentence in his final logbook entry. "Some roads don't lead anywhere. They keep you."